The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
On the night of November 6, 2021, Grammy-nominated rapper and actor Rakim Mayers, better known as A$AP Rocky, got into an argument outside a Hollywood hotel with his childhood friend Terell Ephron. Ephron says Rocky pulled out a gun and shot at him. Now the embattled rapper stands trial for felony assault and faces up to 24 years in prison if convicted. I'm Vinny Politan, and welcome to the Court TV podcast. On this episode, we're taking you inside the courtroom with opening statements in the trial of A$AP Rocky. Here, prosecutors and defense attorneys lay out their cases for the jurors who will decide his fate.
This is the Court TV podcast with Vinny Politan.
This is the time and place for opening statements. If you're inclined to be a note taker, it's not necessary to take notes during the opening statement, because the opening statement is not evidence. The opening statement is what the attorney believe the evidence will show. Whether the evidence in fact shows what they believe, well, we'll all know that at the end of the case. Once the opening statements are over and we begin with the testimony, if you are a note taker, that would be the time to start taking notes. Mr. Prislovic, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I wanted to start off by, on behalf of myself, Mr. Lewin, I'm sure on behalf of the defense too, and all the court staff, we all want to thank you so far for the time, attention, and candor that you gave to us during jury selection. We all understand that was a long process, and we appreciate your attention. After going through that long process, I'm sure some of you are thinking, wow, this must be a difficult case, or this must be a really complicated case. And to be fair to you, if I was sitting in your position and I looked out on the number of jurors that we started with, or even the number of attorneys that are up here, I'd probably have the same thought myself. But what the evidence will show in this case, and what will become almost instantly clear, is that this is not a complicated case. The evidence will show that the events in this case were captured on surveillance video. I'm going to start this whole presentation out by playing the video for you. So you will have that frame of reference as we're talking about different features, the people that were involved, the locations that are involved, and what happened. You will already have seen the video. The first video that I'm going to show you was captured on November 6th of 2021 at around 10:10 p.m. just outside of a parking garage entrance, mid-block, so on Argyle, in the middle of Argyle, between Hollywood Boulevard and Selma. The second video that I'm going to show you was captured 7 minutes later, so at 10:17. It was, if we're being generous, 2 blocks, maybe 1 city block away from the first location, down Argyle, around Selma, at a small intersection called Selma and Vista Del Mar. So I'm going to play the first video for you, that outside of the parking lot. Now I'm going to move to the second location, that at Vista Del Mar and Selma, and I'm going to pre-warn you, it's a little small, it's at a distance, so you're going to want to focus your attention at the top left-hand corner. All right, now let's go over the details. As I said, the people that are involved, the location, and I'll give you an explanation of what you've seen on these two videos. This case takes place in the heart of Hollywood. This is the iconic Hollywood and Vine. The picture you see here is just a demonstrative picture of that intersection, but it's an iconic intersection in Hollywood. That intersection is about 1 block one block west and 1 block north of the crime scene. So for those of you who are familiar with Hollywood and that intersection, it's a pretty big landmark, and that's where I want to focus your attention. Now, the actual shooting in this case takes place on a much smaller street, Selma and Vista Del Mar. But this is the area around where that shooting took place. It is a very densely populated part of Hollywood, and there are some landmarks on there that you might be familiar with, just so that you can familiarize yourself with the location that we're talking about. The Capitol Records building at the top, the W Hotel, and Hollywood Boulevard. The shooting, as you've seen, occurred just outside of a parking lot on that corner of Vista, Del Mar, and Selma. That was a parking lot at the time that was full of cars, and it was ringed by a nightclub on the corner, a sound studio, a hotel, and 3 different apartment buildings right around. As I said, densely populated. This was also Saturday night. Saturday, November 6, 2021 at about 10 p.m. in Hollywood. This is a time that Hollywood is busy. Now that you understand kind of the locations that are involved, I want to start with how this case starts for LAPD.
Hi, I live in the apartment on the corner of Argyle and Selma in Hollywood, and there's just been a shooting.
So at 10:18 p.m., LAPD receives this call, that there's been a shooting at the intersection of Argyle and Selma. The call continues though.
Did you see anything or you just heard it?
Yes. No, we watched it.
Okay, what did you see?
There were 4 men, and they were kind of fighting as they were walking along Argyle, and then they turned left onto Selma. We heard yelling and they started running, and they turned left into the back lot apartments for El Centro Apartments.
Now the 4 men that you see on that screen will be the 4 men that we'll talk about in a minute. They were the 4 that were at that location.
And then someone pulled out, the guy in the black sweatshirt pulled out a gun.
Okay.
And he shot, and I think the guy who shot was blue.
Now the evidence in this case will be that the man in the black sweatshirt was the defendant, Rakim Mayers. That evidence will be uncontradicted. As you have heard throughout jury selection, Mr. Myers is an entertainer, and he goes by the stage name A$AP Rocky. You will hear other nicknames that he is referred to in the evidence in this case, including Flacco and Luigi. At the time of this crime, Mr. Mayers was 33 years old. He has his own company that I believe is referred to as AWGE, A-W-G-E, that you will hear referred to in the testimony in this case. And as we've talked about, his significant other is Rihanna. The victim in this case is a man by the name of Terell Ephron. And Mr. Ephron, you will hear, was also a member of the A$AP Collective, and he went by the nickname A$AP Relly. Mr. Ephron was also 33 years old at the time of this crime. And what you will hear from Mr. Ephron is that he was friends with Mr. Myers well before this case and well before even Mr. Myers was a famous individual. That essentially, I believe they met in high school and grew up together. He has known Mr. Mayers 18 or 19 years at the time that this shooting happens. And you will also hear that he, too, at the time was working in the music industry and he had his own company called Shut Eye Entertainment. Now, I mentioned it already, but to put a finer point on it, the group that both of these men were members of is called ASAP. It doesn't stand for what you probably thought it did when you walked into court. It's an acronym for Always Strive and Prosper. It was formed by high school age kids in Harlem, New York around 2006. They call themselves a collective. You will hear are rappers, producers, music video directors, designers, people that have different artistic pursuits that essentially work together. And there are many members of ASAP. The ones that you will primarily hear in this case are obviously Mr. Mayers, the victim, but also the two friends that were with Mr. Mayers at the time this happened. And they go by ASAP Ills and ASAP 12E. And I will just pre-warn you that 12E gets spelled a bunch of different ways. It's not always consistent. And there will be one last member that you'll hear about briefly, who goes by the stage name ASAP Bari. Sometimes people refer to him as Young Lord. As I said, the four main members of this group that you will hear about are these four men. The victim is on the far right, Mr. Ephron. The defendant is the next person to his left. As I said, ASAP 12E, his given name is Jamel Phillips, and the last is Elijah Ulanger, who goes by ASAP Ills. And these were the four men who were present at the time of both of these incidents. Now I want to take you to that weekend, Saturday night in Hollywood. There was actually at the time a music festival or concert series going on known as Complex Con in Long Beach. And you will hear that Mr. Mayers was to be a performer at that event the day after the shooting, the Sunday, November 7th. Now, although I told you that Mr. Mayers and Mr. Ephron were close at one point, you will hear that throughout their relationship there was tension between the two of them. And that tension was essentially building up to the night of November 6th, 2021. You will not hear all the reasons why there was tension between the two of them, but we will get to the point the day before this shooting, November 5th, 2021, when that tension kind of comes to a head. But what happens on that day, Mr. Ephron will tell you, is that he is in a car with that last member of the ASAP group that I talked about, ASAP Bari. The two of them are driving when ASAP Bari receives a phone call from Mr. Mayers. And ASAP Bari takes that call on speakerphone, so Mr. Ephron, who's in the car, can hear both sides of the conversation. He can hear Mr. Mayers, and he can also hear ASAP Bari. And in the course of that call, Mr. Ephron, the victim, heard the defendant saying these rude and aggressive things about him. Mr. Mayers at the time does not know that Mr. Ephron is in the car with the victim. This leads to the next day, November 6, 2021. You'll hear that Mr. Ephron was in Los Angeles working with one of the artists that he managed. He was asleep around 9:00 p.m. when he started receiving a series of urgent messages from not only from Mr. Mayers, but from the two other men that were with him, ASAP Ills and ASAP 12. And you'll hear that he received a number of calls kind of back to back to back from the three of them. Now, he didn't answer those calls because he was sleeping, but when he ultimately woke up, he saw that he had a number of missed calls. He also received text messages from Mr. Mayers that were aggressive, seeking a confrontation with him, asking him where he was. Mr. Mayers is on the left side of this conversation. Where are you at? Let's get to it. Stop ducking my calls. The messages that the victim's receiving are instantly aggressive towards him. So you will hear from Mr. Ephron that he called the defendant. He was groggy because he had just woken up. They had a conversation and they agreed to meet outside of the W Hotel in Hollywood. Mr. Ephron will tell you that as he went to that meeting, he was of the frame of mind that he and Mr. Mayers were going to have a confrontation. That he believed they would argue, and that ultimately this would lead to kind of repairing their relationship. So they would each be able to speak their piece and essentially fight like brothers do, and that it would ultimately bring them closer together. They would repair sort of the issues that they each had with each other. So that's how Mr. Ephron is going into this meeting. Now, let's talk about the location where they meet, this location just outside of the W Hotel. You're going to see this map throughout this case. So I want to take some time to walk through it with you so you understand the various features that are depicted here. On the left side of the screen is Argyle Avenue. On the bottom of the screen is Selma Avenue. And on the right side of the screen is El Centro Avenue. Now you can't see it in this map, but if the map were to continue off the top of the screen, Hollywood Boulevard would be just above that. In the middle of this map, there's a small street called Vista Del Mar that kind of goes north and then forces you to go east. The red arrows that you see here are the path of travel that Mr. Mayers took that evening. So it starts at that mid-block location on Argyle, continues down to Selma, and then up Vista Del Mar, around that corner, all the way to El Centro, and then he made a left turn on El Centro and went above, off the map. The numbers in the red boxes that you see here, 1, 2, 3, and 4, are the 4 different locations where the police were ultimately able to recover surveillance video from. There are 4 different locations. Attached to each one of those locations, you'll see the green triangle and the green, and with a green arrow in the middle. And what that represents is very roughly, this is not meant to be, exact, but very roughly the direction that a camera attached to that building was facing. You will also hear that locations 1, 2, and 4 captured video only. But you will hear that the location with the number 3 captured both video and audio. So I told you there's 2 incident locations, 2 altercations that happened. The first happens where the yellow box is right now, right outside of that parking garage. The second happens at that corner of Selma and Vista Del Mar. And that's where the firearm was actually discharged, where the gunshots were fired. So the first location I want to focus on is that where the initial confrontation happens. This location is the entrance and exit of a parking structure. This is that parking structure entrance if you were standing in Argyle and you were facing towards Selma. So Hollywood Boulevard would be to your back. And the entrance is on the left-hand side there. And what you will see in the videos, this parking lot entrance has those hanging indicators on from the roof that tell you how tall the garage is, so that if you are driving a tall car, you don't, of course there's a fly buzzing around me, you don't run your car into the roof of the parking structure. And I point that out because When you watch the video, you'll actually see that red indicator as a kind of a line through the video, so you know what that is. At the mouth of that parking entrance, there are cameras that are facing the sidewalk. Those are the first view that we saw. And these cameras capture the initial encounter between the victim, Mr. Ephron, who you see there, and the defendant, Mr. Mayers. And you can see that Ills is the first one to intervene to try to separate the two of them. And then at the very bottom of the screen, you see 12E putting his hand to try to also intervene and help separate them. Now I know it goes by quickly, and you're not as familiar with all these people, so I want to kind of break it down a little bit for you and show you what the evidence that you're going to receive throughout this case. The first person that you see in that video is the victim, Mr. Ephron. The second person who you see, who is instantly confrontational with Mr. Ephron, is the defendant, Mr. Mayers. You see on the video that Mr. Mayers is immediately aggressive towards Mr. Ephron. He's pulling at Mr. Ephron's sweatshirt, and he's pushing Mr. Ephron backward and pushes him off camera, out of camera view. The third person that you see, as I told you, is Elijah Ulanger, who also goes by ASAP Ills, or he might just be referred to as Ills throughout this. If you look closely, you can actually see his stage name embroidered on the jacket that he's wearing there. And what he attempts to do is to de-escalate this situation, to get between the two men and to physically separate them. And you'll see that all three of them go off screen for a period of time. Mr. Ephron will tell you that during the period of time that they are off screen is when the defendant first produces that semi-automatic pistol from his waistband. He pulls it out of his waistband and he's holding it to Mr. Ephron. Mr. Ephron will tell you that the defendant pointed the gun at his chest and was essentially trying to point the gun around Ills, who was between them. That at the time that he was pointing the gun at Mr. Ephron, he was also threatening Mr. Ephron. I'm going to kill you. Keep in mind, these men have known each other for a long time. And Mr. Ephron will tell you, in his state of mind, he never believed that he was going to be shot. He never believed that the defendant would actually shoot him. He will tell you that had this been a stranger, someone he didn't know as well, he would have been petrified. As you can imagine, anyone pointing a gun at you would upset you. But he knows the defendant. He knows that Mr. Mayers is not going to shoot him. He knows so much so that he'll tell you he looked at the defendant and said, if you brought a gun, you should shoot it. That's how confident he is that he knows the defendant is not going to pull that trigger. Now, the fourth person you can barely see on this video as they come back into frame, I told you, is Jamel Phillips, who goes by 12E or ASAP 12. And you can just see his hand at the very bottom of the screen. When they come back on screen, and specifically when Mr. Mayers comes back on screen, you can see the gun in his hand. You will hear that that gun that he's holding is a semi-automatic pistol, or has features that are consistent with a semi-automatic pistol. Right now, as it's paused on the screen, you can see that he's holding that gun behind his back. But you will also see the gun come forward in front of his body before he ultimately tucks it back into his waistband. And you will see from the video that there were bystanders. As I said, this is a busy Saturday night in Hollywood, walking by as this confrontation is taking place. You will hear that right after that encounter that you saw, that Mr. Mayers walked away and was walking down Argyle towards Selma. Mr. Ephron will tell you that as he walked away, he looked over at 12E, Mr. Phillips, and he saw 12E putting a pocket knife away. And Mr. Ephron, and then 12E, Mr. Phillips, walked behind the defendant, Mr. Mayers, and Ills walked behind him as well. So the three men that had come to confront Mr. Ephron walked away down Argyle towards Selma. And Mr. Ephron will tell you that at that moment, his mindset about the initial confrontation changed. I told you that Mr. Ephron will tell you when he first went there, he believed that this was meant to be a confrontation so that they could strengthen their relationship. But having just had a gun pointed at him and seeing another friend putting away a pocket knife, that his mindset changed, and he understood these men never came here to try to make peace with him, that it was always meant to be a confrontation. And he decided at that moment that having a gun pointed at him was sort of a bridge too far in their friendship, and he understood he was probably never going to have the same friendship, especially with the defendant, ever again. And you will hear that as the defendant walked away, Mr. Ephron followed behind him and was yelling and screaming at him, even though he knew the defendant had a gun. Because although Mr. Ephron believed this is going to damage our relationship, he still never believed that the defendant would actually shoot at him. It's not as if Mr. Ephron will tell you that he had some death wish or that he was not scared of guns. He will not come in and say that. What he will tell you again is that had anyone else done this, he would have been frightened. But he had known the defendant for so long and they were close. So he walks down Argyle towards Selma and follows behind the three other men. When they get to Selma, they all turn left and they walk towards Vista Del Mar. And they end up at that location we've talked about, that corner of Selma and Vista Del Mar. And as Mr. Mayers stepped off the curb, he walked into frame of the camera at location number 2 that's pointing towards Selma. Now I want to take you, before I play the video again, I want to take you to that corner so that you can see from that night what it looked like. It's a small street with a parking lot immediately adjacent to it that were full of parked cars. And at 10:17 p.m. when they arrived at that intersection and the defendant stepped off the street corner into view of camera number 2, you will see video from that location. The video that I've played for you already and that I'm going to play for you again is from that location number 2. You will also see, that's the main video that you're watching, but you'll see in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a smaller video on top of it. It kind of has a bluish tint to it. And that video is from another location behind building number 2 where the number 3 is. And the video that you're seeing from that location is identified there by the green arrow. But what's important about that video, because the video does not capture the shooting at location number 3. What location number 3 captures is audio. and it captures the sound of the gun being fired twice. This is the location number 2, where the camera, the video that actually captured that shooting was. You can see the cameras at the very top corner of the building, and it's about 3 properties away from the location that we're seeing. So again, the video is captured at a distance. It's a admittedly grainy video. It's not the most clear that you could possibly have, but it captures enough features that you can identify who is who when you watch this video. So I told you the main video that you're watching is from location number 2, and that smaller location number 3 is in the corner. Before I play the video, I want to orient you to what you're seeing. Along the top is Vista Del Mar. The parking lot is just out of view of the camera at the top of the screen. Along the top left-hand corner is Selma, forms that intersection. The red arrow is the defendant, Mr. Mayers. And the green arrow is the victim, Mr. Ephron. Okay. Now what you see as the video plays is the various cameras on location number 2 switching between 3 different cameras that are mounted to that building. What's important about that, towards the end of the video, you'll see as Mr. Mayers is running away from the location, running down Vista Del Mar towards El Centro, he trips a floodlight that's motion activated, and when you watch the video closely, that floodlight is captured by both locations. So location number 2 and location number 3, those cameras each capture that floodlight turning on. And when you watch the videos together, you can see that moment in time when the lights flash on, line up. And that's how you know the sound correlates with the video that you're seeing playing at the same time from a different location. Now, I told you, we all know the video from location number 2 is from a distance. If you zoom in on the area where this incident happened, and we will play a zoomed in version of this video, what you see is a very pixelated image. But what even that captures still are the colors the individuals are wearing, which is how you can distinguish who is who on the video. You'll see Mr. Ephron on the far left. Ills is just next to him. 12E, who's wearing the red jacket, is just next to Ills. And then the defendant, who's wearing all black, is at the bottom of the screen. Again, I understand if you watch this video one time, you may not pick up these features, but as you watch it repeatedly, you'll be able to tell who is who. And you'll also be able to tell when you watch these videos in sequence, because they walk in front of other cameras that are far more clear, that you can easily identify who is who on this video. So this is the zoomed in version of that incident. This does not have any audio. Now, as we play the zoomed in version, you'll also see that Mr. Ephron is struggling with Ills. And what Mr. Ephron will tell you is that immediately as the defendant turned and pointed the gun at him, he jumped behind Ills, essentially to put Ills between him and the defendant. And you'll see on the video the defendant lunging one way and then the other way around Ill, trying to get at the victim who is holding Ills in front of him. Now, despite how dangerous this is, having a semi-automatic pistol pointed at you and discharged twice, you will hear that Mr. Ephron was not seriously injured by this shooting. He has these injuries to the middle knuckle of one of his hands. Mr. Ephron will tell you that at the time the shooting was happening, he immediately felt a burning sensation to his hand, which led him to believe that these were graze wounds from one of the bullets that was shot at him. Perhaps they were. Perhaps they were not. Whether or not the victim in this case was actually shot or injured by this will not be something that you have to decide at the end of the case. We ask you to wait until the end of the case when the judge instructs you on the law, what elements are actually required to be proven before you make any decision. And to listen to the charges specifically and not consider charges that the defendant is not charged with. In this case, he's not charged with attempted murder, for instance. Now, before I move on, I want to focus in on the last location that I haven't talked about much, location number 4. That location is a loading dock for this building on El Centro. It's right at the corner of El Centro and Vista Del Mar. And what you'll see in the video from that location is the defendant, Mr. Mayers, and his companion, 12E, walking from Vista Del Mar up El Centro towards Hollywood Boulevard. The arrows indicate their path of travel. They're going to come from that corner and then walk up El Centro. The camera itself is in that red circle. And you'll see this video is far more clear. And you'll see features of their clothing that you can match up to the clothing from the other videos that we've already watched. For instance, I mean, you can see just from Mr. Mayer's facial features that he's the one wearing all black. You can see from his facial features compared to the video from the courtroom structure. And then, as I said, the various features of his clothing, the rhinestones on the hood of his sweatshirt in both videos, and the design, the rhinestone design on the chest of his sweatshirt at both videos. And taking all the videos in their totality and comparing them is how you'll be able to decide on the video who is who. Now, I played the 911 call for you that LAPD received at 10:18, which triggered their response. And you'll see and hear that at 10:27, LAPD officers responded to the 911 call, and as is their duty, they responded quickly to this call to try to, of shots fired in the middle of Hollywood. You will hear from at least one of the officers who responded to that location, and the officer will tell you that as part of their uniform, they wear cameras that are mounted to their chest, and you will actually get to watch camera that captures the police response. After this shooting, the evidence will be that all 4 of these men, the defendant, 12E, Ills, and the victim, all left the scene. You'll hear that there were at least 2 people who called 911 to report this crime who were just people living in the surrounding area, not actually involved in the altercation itself. You'll hear that the 911 callers were reporting different information. So the first call would be that the gunshots were fired at Argyle and Selma. The second call would be that the gunshots were fired in the area closer to Vista Del Mar and El Centro. You will hear from the officer that as they responded, they come to the scene looking for a victim. That's their primary focus. Trying to find anyone who needs immediate life-saving attention. Their second focus will be looking for the potential suspects if they can find them. And you'll hear from the officer that as he's receiving information that's taking him to different locations, he's actually going between the different locations and trying to piece together what happened. But what will be important from his testimony is that he is not given a precise location to exactly where this shooting happened. And with the limited information that he has, he and his partners are doing the best job that they can to find any victims, any suspects, or any evidence of a shooting. You'll hear the officer talk to different people who were just out and about, try to figure out what was going on, that neither of the 911 callers would meet with them, and that they searched not only the surrounding streets, but they primarily focused on the parking lot that was right at that corner of Vista Del Mar and Selma, because the second 911 caller had told him, or had relayed that it was possible that the shooting was happening into a car. The officer will tell you that they searched the area and they did not find any evidence of a shooting. They didn't find a victim with injuries, they didn't find any of the suspects, and they didn't find any discharged cartridge cases, which are what come out of a gun after you discharge it, in the surrounding area. But again, they don't know exactly where to look with the limited information that they're given. You will also hear from Mr. Ephron that approximately an hour, and he's not precise on the exact time, but approximately an hour after the shooting, he himself returned to the location. Now at this time, the police have already responded and left. Mr. Ephron will tell you that he and his girlfriend went there specifically to look for evidence that this had happened, evidence of this shooting. And Mr. Ephron will tell you, because he knew exactly where the shooting happened, that he was able to locate 2 fired cartridge cases. And this is actually a photograph that Mr. Ephron himself took of one of the fired cartridge cases that he found. Mr. Ephron, you'll hear, went to the police 2 days later, walked into the Hollywood police station to report this crime happening. He brought the 2 fired cartridge cases with him, and he gave them to the police. You will hear that the 2 cartridge cases that he brought in were 9mm Luger caliber cartridge cases. However, you will also hear from Mr. Ephron that immediately after the shooting, about an hour and a half later, he started text messaging the defendant. And he text messaged the defendant, "You try killing me." That was the first message he sent to him. And you'll hear that Mr. Mayers' response was to deny that anything happened. The defendant, in abbreviation, says, "What the f*** is you talking about? Why are you telling people I shot at you?" Denying that any shooting has even happened. Mr. Ephron confronts him again. "You set me up to try to take me from my daughter." And the defendant responds, "I tried to do what? I know you hate me, I hate you too." The defendant responds again, "Stop making up." Again, denying any confrontation took place. Certainly any shooting. We have already told you in jury selection, and you will hear evidence, that after this shooting, Mr. Ephron sought money from Mr. Mayers. In fact, right, hours after the shootings, this is the next day, November 7th, in the early morning hours, 3:40 a.m., you'll hear that Mr. Ephron sent a message to one of his friends saying that he wants money. And identifying the reason why he wants that money is because Mr. Mayers shot at him. You will also hear that based upon these two incidents, the parking lot and the shooting on the corner, that Mr. Ephron filed a civil lawsuit against Mr. Mayers. At the end of this case, you will not be asked to award Mr. Ephron any money. So that consideration will not be a part of your what you're asked to determine. Moving forward in time, you'll hear from LAPD detectives that Mr. Mayers' home was searched on April 20th of 2022, and that during that search, LAPD detective recovered a magazine for a semi-automatic pistol that was 9mm caliber, and that it was loaded with 6 unfired 9mm Luger rounds of live ammunition. You will hear that these items were found in Mr. Mayers' bedroom closet. You will also hear that there was no handgun that was 9mm in Mr. Mayers' home that was for that magazine. So you have a 9mm magazine, but no handgun to go with it. The last point I want to leave you with before I conclude is that we expect, in this case, that the defense will call 12B, Mr. Phillips, to testify. At the time of the shooting, again, he's friends with all these participants. He's 32 years old. And it is expected that he will testify that the defendant was in fact the person on the video who fired the 2 gunshots that we hear. So it will essentially be uncontested that Mr. Mayers was the person who fired the gun at that street corner, and that he will tell you the gun that the defendant fired was a starter pistol. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what the evidence in this case will show at the end of this case. As I've said, we expect that the defense will attempt to present an alternative explanation for what happened that night. But we ask you to do one thing, which is, as you evaluate the evidence from both sides in this case, to not leave your common sense at the door, and wait until the end of the case, when you have all the evidence, to make your decision, listen to the court's instructions on the law, and return the only just verdict there is. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Przlomek is finished, and Mr. Zakopina, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen, this case is about one man's jealousy, lies, and greed. And that man is not Rocky. That man is Terell Ephron, or you've heard the name Relly. He is the source of all the evidence in this case, all of it. That the prosecution is going to rely on, he's the source of all the evidence. The 2 assaults you're going to hear about in this case were both committed by this Relly. Both. All the evidence comes through his mouth. Every single piece of evidence for you to decide these charges comes through his mouth. This case rises or falls on his credibility. The videos you saw, without his testimony, proves absolutely nothing. You need to believe his testimony and his version of events from the video for these charges to be proven. The last thing the district attorney said on his opening statement to you was, don't leave your common sense at the door, or use your common sense, something like that. Please don't leave your common sense at the door. I implore you to use your common sense in this case. Look, I will address the credibility of Relly in great detail later, what the evidence will show. But first, let me begin explaining the purpose of an opening statement, what we do here. Opening statements are really lawyers giving you a preview of how we believe the evidence is going to show you, come in. How it will unfold in this case, but it's more than that, actually. It's a promise to you. It's a promise from us to you. It's a promise that what we say is going to be proven is actually proven. And it's not like one of those politician promises. You know the politician promises, right? If you vote for me, I'll lower taxes, I'll make it safe, unemployment will go down, all those great things that politicians promise, and then based on those promises, you vote. And then you hope they fulfill those promises. Not here. Here, both sides make promises to you right now. You get to see if we fulfill those promises, and then you vote. That's the difference. Ladies and gentlemen, you represent the state of California, the people of the state of California. It's an awesome burden. And there's no greater service a citizen of this country can do than serve in the military or do what you're being asked to do right now. Stand in judgment of another person in a matter of such great importance. It's an incredible burden to bear. But that's why the 16 of you were chosen. There were 106 people here. You made the cut because you all, and even the alternates, assured us that you could carry out that burden fairly, impartially, without a bias, without a closed mind. Listen to the evidence carefully before rendering your decision, you promised. And to base your decision only on the evidence, not some preconceived notion stemming from the nature of this case or what you may have read or heard.
This is entirely argument.
But just on facts. And to abide by the basic tenets of our Constitution, proof beyond a reasonable doubt and a presumption of innocence. And they're not mere technicalities, instead they're the backbone of this country. A person is presumed innocent, the judge straight told you. And it means he is in fact innocent until and unless the prosecution proves otherwise beyond a reasonable doubt. A reasonable doubt, the judge will give you the law later at the end of the case, but it's a doubt that will cause you to hesitate in a matter of importance in your own life. I submit to you the decision you make in this case, at the end, will be the most important decision in the life of Rakim Mayers and his family. And I'm confident that if you apply the standard and hold the prosecution to the burden of proving each and every element of both counts, beyond that doubt, the reasonable doubt, this will work out. And that's why the 16 of you sworn as jurors. Look, this is serious business, and I just want to tell you one last thing before we dive in. I just think some jurors, some people when they become jurors forget. No one here is going to, both sides are not going to ask you to do anything you don't do in your everyday life. No one's going to ask you to do anything when you're assessing credibility, when you make determinations of credibility. Nothing you don't do in your everyday life. Whether someone's telling the truth, whether they're lying, whether they're mistaken. Just bring your everyday life experiences. You'll be the best jurors possible. There is no magic formula. There is no elixir. And as you now know, there is no jury school. Use your God-given common sense in looking at this evidence. I know that will package you this case. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my name is Joe Decapine. I, along with Sarah Kaplan and Chad Siegel, have the absolute honor and privilege to represent Rakim Mayers, known globally as A$AP Rocky. The evidence will show you that Rocky was a self-made man, risen from the most humble beginnings to extraordinary successes through work, dedication, and artistic
Your Honor,
brilliance.
this is argument is also irrelevant.
Overruled. What is said in opening statement is not evidence. What is evidence is what can be proven.
May I say? Sorry.
Sometimes things are said in opening statement that cannot be proven, that are not proven. Sometimes they are. That's what this case will be about.
Remember my promises, because I'll remember theirs. When we talk in a few weeks on closing statements. I remember the DA put up a slide in the opening. It's from Harlem, a picture of him and Rihanna. Talked about when he was a teenager. I want to do the same thing. You'll hear he was born in Harlem, like they said. He was raised in poverty.
Your Honor.
You'll hear that
Same, Your Honor, the same
Overruled.
objection.
Stop. Overruled.
You'll hear about his upbringing, his mother and his siblings, and how he overcame. Overcame with hard work, with dedication, and with talent.
Mr. Terell,
Rocky is not only a...
I do want you to stick to what you, the evidence will show.
Yes, sir. I do believe the evidence will show that, but I'm going to get deeper into these facts. But what the evidence will also show is he's not only a celebrated artist and a fashion icon, he's a man who raised a beautiful family, as the district attorney put up the picture, his significant other.
Your Honor.
Sustain. You got to get to the facts of the case.
You're going to hear the stark contrast in two individuals, Rocky on one side, Terell Ephron on the other side, known as Relly. He represents a very different narrative. The evidence will show you that this Relly presents himself to the world as a wealthy, successful man. Source slide that he's a recording artist, businessman. He flaunts a very lavish lifestyle on social media. He poses with luxury goods.
Your Honor, the same objection. None of this is evidence.
Evidence will show you this. None of this is evidence yet. There's no evidence on both sides. Posting pictures of himself with large sums of cash and whatnot. It's fraud. He is all about a money grab. The truth is far different. And you're going to see this extravagant lifestyle that this really flaunts. There's nothing more than a fraud, built on not on success and hard work, but upon criminal activity. Ladies and gentlemen, this case is all about money. I've said it once, twice, I'll say it a few more times. The evidence will show you it's nothing more than a money grab, nothing more. A clear attempt at extortion by Relly so he could keep funding this extravagant lifestyle of his that he presents to the world. You're going to see the only reason we're in this courtroom is because Rocky would not agree to be a victim of another one of his crimes. That's why we're here. Because Rocky said, here's some money. We're not here. He doesn't go to the police. And even after he went to the police, if Rocky gave him money, we're not here. It's not about justice, it's about money for him. Period, end of story. And I will show you that. The evidence will make clear that Relly is trying to leverage a fabricated story to extract money from Rocky, using lies to support these claims. The evidence will show you that Relly is a blatant perjurer, someone who takes an oath, and despite that oath, lies. The evidence will show you, and you will see him commit perjury right before you in this court. And you'll see how important that is to this case. Because the evidence will show that despite all the evidence they claim to have, all of it, and I mean all of it, will rise and fall on the word of Relly and his credibility. Period, end of story. You will see, if you can't believe him, the prosecution's case fails. Now let's walk you through the events leading to the incident of November 6th, 2021. which is at the heart of this case. But to do that, we have to start a few years back. From Relly's own testimony, that was the catalyst for this incident. His resentment, from his own testimony, his resentment was the catalyst for this incident, and his animosity towards Rocky. The evidence will show you that Relly met Rocky when he was in high school in Harlem. They were both part of that creative and artistic conglomerate called ASAP, which now you know means always strive and prosper. Over the years, Rocky achieved more and more success in the entertainment industry at first. He did maintain a friendship with Relly, unfortunately for him. He even sought to help Relly through professional collaboration. But that wasn't enough for Relly, clearly. You'll see the kind of person Relly is in this courtroom. You're gonna see it. He was jealous and angry, and as Rocky rejected some of the projects he presented him, Relly's resentment grew deeper and darker. So embittered by the success achieved by Rocky, someone he once considered peer, Relly embarked on a dangerous course of action. And in November 2021, Relly's resentment towards him reached the fever pitch. After tragedy had struck another member of this ASAP group, an individual named ASAP Josh had untimely death, had passed away. Evidence will show you that Rocky stepped up, spoke to the parents and the mom, ASAP Josh, and offered to cover the cost for the funeral, bring the body back to New York and pay for the funeral. But Relly, still blinded by resentment, believed otherwise. He thought for some reason Rocky didn't agree to pay, or had agreed to pay, but then didn't actually pay. And he was furious. He went as far as to threaten physical violence against him because he thought he didn't pay for the funeral or for the expense of flying the body back. He was wrong because he did pay. But he went as far as to threaten physical violence. And you're going to see that for yourself, ladies and gentlemen. On October 16th, a few weeks before this incident that you're all here to hear about, Relly told his friend that Rocky was a piece of and declared, "I'm gonna beat this up." Now it's funny, they showed you a lot of text messages. I didn't see that one. Did not see that one. That's the catalyst. That's weeks before this incident, when he came in hot on November 6, 2021 on our ground. And if you fast forward only a few weeks on November 6, 2021, you'll see that. You see that Relly sought to turn those threatening words into dangerous actions, and he did. The evidence will show you that on November 6, 2021, Rocky was scheduled to attend a music festival. They put it up there called ComplexCon, with two other members of the ASAP crew, Elijah Wulanga and Jamel Phillips, you now know them as ASAP Ills and ASAP 12. So in order to address Relly's resentment, because he was really mad, and have him accompany Ills and 12 to the festival, Rocky reached out to him multiple times. As a matter of fact, I think you saw a text from one of Relly's friends to Relly saying, "Hey, I think he wants you, keeping Rocky wants you to perform at ComplexCon." So Rocky was trying to get him to come. It was sort of a celebration of the ASAP crew. So Rocky, yes, he was urgently messaging him because they were late for this ComplexCon. You're going to hear that from multiple witnesses. He was making them late for the show, so there were multiple messages from both 12 and Rocky. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? However, you're going to learn that although Relly, because Rocky had reached out to Relly to make plans to meet at his hotel. And you're going to learn, however, that Relly said he was staying at the Lowe's Hotel, who was in fact staying at the Lowe's Hotel, lied to Rocky and said he was staying at the W Hotel. Why? Because he wanted Rocky to think he was staying at a nicer place, according to him, which is consistent with his pattern of showing off a phony, extravagant lifestyle. but also consistent with the pattern of lying. You'll see Relly committed perjury about that exact reason. And despite Rocky's best intentions, the evidence will show you that Relly was angry when he agreed to meet Rocky that day. And that anger came to a head when he encountered Rocky on the street, outside of a parking lot, on Argyle Avenue, leading to a brief altercation that took place on the street, which you saw a clip of, a very short clip of. You'll learn that Relly claims Rocky instigated, Relly, by the way, is twice the size of him, but we'll get to that. Relly claims that Rocky instigated the altercation, but the evidence will show you it was Relly who was the one looking for a fight. And you'll hear about Relly's day from the hours before meeting Rocky. You'll hear what happened in that day, independent of Rocky in that day. You'll hear Relly's claim that Rocky pressed a gun to his stomach, to his chest, and his head. But the evidence, the independent evidence, the stuff that you don't need Relly's word for, will show you otherwise. Fortunately, the video evidence from the parking garage captured the incident. And that puts a lie to Relly's fabricated story about that. The video will also show you who the real aggressor was here. It shows you that Relly approached Rocky and reached out first. It was Relly who made the first physical contact. You're gonna see in a second. The DA said that Rocky was the aggressor. There's a video there. It also shows that what followed was a very quick scuffle. Again, you saw it. With Relly making physical contact and pulling Rocky towards him. Not Rocky pushing Relly, who outweighs him by almost 100 pounds. Not Rocky pushing Relly, but Relly pulling Rocky. The DA said, in his opening, he said that Rocky was pushing Relly. You know who else said Relly was pulling Rocky? Relly said that. Relly in a statement. And when he watched the video, said, yes, I was pulling Rocky this way. That's not a good narrative. So they just changed that. But Relly has made statements about this incident. And they're stuck with those. It shows the incident was over in a matter of seconds, this videotape. And despite Relly's exaggerated claims that there was no evidence that a gun was pressed against his stomach, directed at his chest, or pointed at his head. There's none. This didn't happen. Instead, the evidence shows that Relly, again, physically much larger than Rocky, was the antagonizer here. Now, all that being said, I do need to pause here for a second. I need to pause there for a second and address the very thing that serves as the basis for Relly's fabricated story. The video that you saw, the first video, shows Rocky holding an object what appears to be a gun. And Relly seized on that and manufactured his extortion claim. And we'll get to the extortion in a bit. And remember, this is a promise from medieval. We'll see extortion. And if I'm not good on my promise, you'll hold it against me. I want you to. The evidence will make clear that the object Relly alleged was a firearm was absolutely nothing more than a prop gun. The DA ended his opening statement saying, 12B will tell you that. He'll testify on behalf of Rocky and tell you that. Not just 12B, multiple witnesses will tell you that. Not just 12B. Multiple witnesses will tell you that that was a prop gun. You'll learn that that was a prop gun, also called a starter gun, a blank gun, but it's a type of fake gun. It's used in pop movies and music videos. It's also used to scare off attackers by looking and sounding like a real gun, without actually firing a live round. The evidence will show you that Rocky, obviously, I think you all know by now, is a high-profile person in the public spotlight, and he was a target. The evidence will show, in fact, that he was the victim of prior violence, which caused him to have to carry this. Victim of home invasions, victim of a stalker at that time, in November of 2021, victim of a slashing on his face, which he still carries with him today. It's,
Your Honor,
Well,
there's
it's gone.
been, Your Honor, there's been no.
Rocky was advised by security to carry a prop gun to scare off potential attackers. And by the way, folks, listen to this one. Rocky was licensed to possess firearms and licensed to carry firearms in November of 2021. He was licensed by the state of California. He could have legally had his own firearm. He didn't want to carry a real gun, though. Despite his ability to do so legally, he didn't want to carry a real gun. For fear that he would either injure someone or himself. Again, I want to repeat that. He didn't need to hide a gun, carry an illegal gun. He was licensed to carry a gun in this state. So you're going to learn that in July 2021, a few months before the incident with Relly, Rocky was in a music video with Rihanna that had prop guns in it. The evidence will show you that Rocky took one of them, which he carried as a security measure, as he was advised to do, to scare off potential attackers. And that's exactly what he tried to do with Relly on November 6, 2021. Unfortunately, you hear that Relly was not to be deterred, not scared, because Relly knew that that gun wasn't real. There will be evidence to that effect. And all of Rocky's friends knew that Rocky carried a prop gun for safety. All of them. In fact, the evidence will show you that Relly not only told Rocky as much, but he actually called Rocky's bluff and said, shoot me, knowing that he couldn't. With all this laid out, I do want to show you the video and walk you through it with respect to the first encounter. I'm going to play it once, it's quick, and then I want to show you two snippets. Here's the first encounter. That's Relly coming up. There's two things I want to play for you in there. The first thing is, the first person to raise a hand to anyone is Relly. You're going to see when he comes up, initially, that's him, we all agree, in those black pants coming up. First person in the video, see if he goes with his left hand. He raises his hand first. Play that one snippet, Eleanor, please. Boom. Do it again. Boom. He comes up with that left hand before Rocky raises his right hand. And how do you know that? Play the next clip, please. He has his hand around Rocky's neck or shoulder, and Rocky's right hand then finally comes up. Boom. This guy has his hands around Rocky's neck or shoulder before Rocky's right hand comes up. Boom. And then you heard and you saw in the video, they going backwards. Relly, again, who's much bigger, you can see that from there, said to the police, yeah, I pulled him back. I pulled him back. They told you, well, Rocky pushed him back. That's not what Relly said. Defies sort of the laws of physics. He outweighs him by almost 100 pounds. Relly pulled him back. And by the way, all the gun pointing to the head, chest, pressed against the stomach would have had to have happened within seconds of that video with that kid Ills in between them. Seconds. You saw none of that on the video. And the second encounter, after that brief altercation by the parking garage. Relly was angry and out of control still, and he wouldn't stop. The evidence will show you that those three guys, Rocky, Ills, and Twelby, walked away. They walked away. There was a map put up here. I don't have one of those, but it was nice. It was a map showing where the first thing happened, and then there was a block, and then it walked around the block where the second thing happened. That guy followed them around two corners, pursuing them. He hadn't had enough, apparently. They were walking away from him, trying to get away from him. He pursued them around two corners. And the evidence will show you that those guys, Rocky, Ills, and Twelby, tried to get away from him. They tried. You'll hear that although Relly claimed that Rocky had a real gun, now, Relly not only continued to follow the guy with a real gun, but he followed and yelled at them and berated them and told the Ills, "You're a crackhead," and told Twelby, "You live in the projects. You're not successful like me," and told Rocky, "You're a bitch." So the guy who supposedly pulled a real gun on him, and now apparently someone else has a knife too, and they're running away from him, he's chasing them, antagonizing them, bragging about his own successes. You'll listen to Relly's story about that, ladies and gentlemen. You get to assess the credibility. Because it will continue to unravel. His story will continue to unravel. Even the police questioned him. "Why would you continue to follow Rocky after he supposedly pulled a real gun out on you?" said the police to Relly. And you'll hear Relly's answer to the police. "I don't know." That was the answer. "I don't know." I promise you that answer is going to change in this courtroom. That's what he said initially when asked. And of course he didn't know. He had to say, "I didn't know why I followed them." Because he couldn't tell the police the truth that he knew Rocky's gun was a prop gun. Because that wouldn't work for his narrative. One that could actually shoot him. And because he was aware of that fact, Relly continued his aggression. You'll hear that Relly was so angry that he was ready to hit Twelby, according to Relly. You'll hear that he was so angry that he hated Ills, according to Relly. You'll learn that when Relly finally caught up with him around two corners, on the corner of Selma and Vista Del Mar, his anger and hatred came to a boiling point, and he attacked this kid Ills. Attacked him. And make no mistake about this, the evidence will show you, Relly was the aggressor there as well. And Rocky, again, significantly smaller than Lee. Fired that prop gun, that starter gun, which makes sounds just like a real gun. That's the purpose of it. He fired it twice, hoping the sound would be enough to scare off Relly and protect Ills. Wrong. Relly didn't stop. He didn't stop because he knew it was a prop gun, but he didn't stop. And the evidence will show you that after Rocky fired those two warning shots with that prop gun, car alarms went off. Because there was that big parking lot right there where they were. Car alarms went off. I'm sorry that you guys are here. It's hard to look everywhere. So Twelby, being sort of sound mind, told Rocky, "Hey, listen, man, get out of here. The car alarms are going off now. People are going to start coming." Rocky obviously is a public figure, and now people are going to have their attention drawn to this. Get out of here. Rocky listened. He persuaded Rocky to leave the scene. Twelby said, "I'll check on Ills," because Ills was having a rough go of it. Ills is smaller than Rocky. And really was pummeling. You're going to hear about how Ills' face looked after this encounter. It was a hot mess. So you'll hear a different story from Relly. He claims, he grabbed him, Ills, as a human shield a human shield. Tony Hills didn't get shot, but he was the human shield. Evidence will show you that's just another lie. It's another lie. The evidence will show you that. You'll see that Relly knew the prosecutor couldn't hurt him, first of all. Second, you're going to see that Relly wasn't hiding behind Ills or under Ills. In fact, in the video, if you look carefully, and we'll show you, you'll see that Relly's on top of Ills as they're on the floor, on top of him, punching him. And even after Rocky left the scene, that's simple. Even after Rocky left the scene and ran, the evidence will show you that Relly continued to attack Ills. A witness will walk you through that. That sort of is a problem for them. I mean, this guy was claimed he was shot at one point, and he is still attacking the guy that he started to attack before there was any warning shots fired. He's still attacking, not to be deterred by any starter pistol or real bullets from him. The DA played you a video here that had that sound. There was a little box in the bottom that had sound. Or pop pop. That video was called the sequence surveillance video. The district attorney played on the roll. Funny part about that video is that they cut out that last part of the video. We'll play you the full part. But the part where Ills goes back and attacks, Relly goes back and attacks Ills. They cut that part of that video out. It's not on that sequence surveillance video. They cut out those last 3-4 seconds. That's a problem. Now, this altercation, like the first one around the corner, was also captured on video, but as you saw, that thing is not clear. And I saw some pictures up here earlier. It looked like aliens or something. But it's not clear, but you can make some things out. But even Relly in his testimony said, I really can't tell what happened in that video. So we have to go on his word now. And although the video captured that incident, that was less than half a minute, not particularly clear, the evidence will make clear what happened there. The evidence will. Relly physically attacked Ills. Rocky tried to use a prop gun to defend him. And with that, I want to walk you through that video the best we can. We'll play it first. And you notice the drill leaders at the corner. Up here. Focus on here they come. There's Rocky, there's 12E, then Ills comes and he's following him. You see him go right after Ills, Relly, and that's when Rocky fires the warning shots. And there's Ills on top, Relly on top of Ills, punching him, that's Ills going down to the ground. Rocky's gone, 12E's about to be gone, and watch. There goes Relly back after Ills. And then he goes away after he hits him again. Ills eventually caught up with 12E and Rocky. His face was basically busted open. We have the clips to play, small ones. Let's do that again. So I'm going to play broken down little clips. The first one is them all being followed, upper right-hand corner again, guys. All being followed by Relly. 3 of them trying to get away. First Rocky, then 12E, then Ills, and Relly's still coming hard. And you'll get to see this as many times as you want later. The second one is Relly on top of Ills on the ground. Is that right? Yeah. Let's see if I can help here. Hold on, can I stand up here for a second?
Actually, Alex is going to get we have a pointer in the courtroom.
Oh.
And he's going to get it.
All right.
So, yeah, you can stand where you want to stand, but in a little while, Alex will bring up the pointer and you can use it, or Mr. Lewin can use it, or Mr. Loma can use it, or Mr. Siegel can use it.
All right, so not to hold everyone up, I'm just going to go forward here right now, okay? All right. Can you go back again, guys? This is the clip where you see Relly and you get to see it later. Don't worry. Really big guy on top of that little guy Ills, on top of him, not using him as a shield. Watch. Go ahead. There's Relly, that's Ills down, and Relly on top of him. Look at him. He's not worried about a shield. He's going after him. And then the last clip is, are we playing that last clip too? Take a look at it. It's after Rocky's gone, Relly continues his pursuit of Ills, this poor little kid. There. And he hits him again before he peels off. He goes to the left to hit Ills, and then he goes to the right. There's also a witness that saw this. He's gonna come in here. Unfortunately, Rocky's attempt to scare off Relly didn't have the intended effect, obviously. Instead, Relly continued his attack on Ills, and then hatched his extortion plan. What you'll learn is that Relly returned to that scene an hour later. He returned to the scene an hour later. And he attempted to fabricate evidence, ladies and gentlemen. This is some offensive stuff. It's gonna be crystal clear to you. He attempted to fabricate evidence. You hear Relly's claim that he came back to the area an hour later with his girlfriend, Lydia Parker, and that while they were there, he quickly found 2 shell casings that Rocky fired right there. He picked them up, and he found them. And then he videotaped them. An hour later, you will see that story fall apart so hard. Why? Because the evidence will show you that well before Relly returned to the area, 7 police officers, like a SWAT team, 7 police officers arrived at that same spot. They responded to the scene and carefully searched every inch of that area. I could not believe what I heard on the opening statement. Oh, the police didn't know where to look. Police searched the exact same spot where Relly claims he picked up the bullets. Not close to it, not near it, the exact same spot. Thank God there's videotapes. There's a body cam from the police where they were searching, and there's that surveillance video that you see here that captured Relly coming back an hour later. Exact same spot. So, we're playing it now? Go ahead. Well, it's not, but we're playing or we're showing? Showing. So this is where the police are. Oh, this is back in, huh? Okay. The police are searching with flashlights. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4 right there right now. There were 7, there's another one here. This is where the alleged tussling was with Relly and Ills. Rocky's here, 12's here. Here's the corner they came around. So this is where the shots, yeah. Very high tech, Your Honor. This is where the shots were.
Like, easy on the screen.
This is where the shots were discharged according to Relly, right here. Okay, right here. Look at where they're searching. This is where Relly, since he comes back an hour later and picks it up, and here's the landmark. Look, this is the corner that they all came around, right here, and this is where it all started. And here, there's that opening right here. See this big orange, red, whatever this thing is here? Look at the picture below. Okay. That thing there is that thing here. That opening here, this is a big orange thing. I mean, you can't really see as well here. You'll be able to take these with you later. This is that orange thing. Go back up again, guys. Down to the other one. This is that orange thing. Directly across a few feet there is where they're searching. Go down. Directly across a few feet there is where they're searching. You know what that is? That's really an hour later. According to the police, they captured that surveillance video. That's him an hour later, coming back to retrieve the bullets in the exact same spot at the, go ahead up. The cops were searching with a flashlight. The cops weren't there looking for, they didn't know what. The cops were there looking for shell casings because they were called in for shots fired. So what the police officers searching that scene found were no shell casings, no bullet fragments anywhere, and they were there. 7 officers with flashlights searching everywhere. No shell casings, no bullet fragments, no damaged property. Understand, there was a parking lot full with cars right across from where this alleged shooting was, real close, right? Not a window broken, a tire popped, a dent in a piece of metal. No damage to any vehicle at all. Absolutely no sign of a real gun being fired, as one of the police officers on the scene said. I repeat that. One of the police officers on the scene said, there's no evidence of a gun being fired. But still, they're going to ask you to believe Relly, who miraculously found them in the dark an hour later after 7 trained officers with searchlights in the same exact spot couldn't find them. So much for the officers didn't know where to look. They were right in the same spot. So, for that matter, although Relly is going to claim his girlfriend was there with him, because that gives a corroborating witness that can back his story up, right? When he found those shell casings an hour later, the video evidence in this case will show otherwise. That she wasn't with him, unless she's a ghost. That she wasn't with him. Thank God for those surveillance videos. So what did Relly first do with the videos he made of the shell casings? Did he go to the police? No, he didn't contact the police. Instead, he sent them to Rocky and Rocky's manager and said, I'm gonna be rich. That was his first thought. I'm gonna be rich. I mean, here's someone who basically claims he was shot. That was the initial story, shot. He miraculously recovered the evidence from the crime scene that the police couldn't find. And he didn't go to the police. His first thought was, I'm gonna be rich. Well, the evidence will show you that Relly committed perjury without those messages. He actually texted a message meaning, I'm going to be rich. He said, I'm going to be itch at one point. But he said, oh, I didn't mean rich when I said itch. I meant irritable. Okay, because itch and irritable is not very close. And when you're typing itch, sometimes the phone changes to irritable. It's just one lie after the other. He testified at an early hearing in this case, under oath. And you'll learn shortly after sending those messages to Rocky and to his business manager, you're going to learn that Relly sent another message to his business partner, to Relly's business partner, saying, I want to get this nigga's money. That's all that was on his mind, not his near-death experience. Oh my God, how did he even survive that scrape on his knuckles? Not running to the police to arrest the culprit. No. Texting everyone, I'm going to get rich, I'm going to get his money. That's all he cared about. The evidence will show you that Relly fabricated these shell casings in order to extort Rocky, right from the outset, right from the get-go. And why did he think he could get away with that? Why? Because Relly didn't know that the police had already returned within minutes of the sounds and the incidents there and searched the scene. He didn't know that. And of course, they didn't find anything. We talked about that already. There was no actual shooting because there was no real gun. There was no evidence of a shooting because there was no real gun. And that's why that same night, in response to Relly's text to Rocky. Rocky texts him, if I shot you, go to the police. They didn't show you that text though. Showed you a bunch of texts between Relly and Rocky that night. They didn't show you that text. Rocky saying, go to the police. Yeah, because someone who really shoots someone and is guilty said, yeah, go to the police. Rocky texted that night. But of course, he didn't go to the police. That was not on his mind. You'll hear what he thinks of the police, this Relly. After his immediate efforts to extort Rocky failed, because he just wanted to get rich, he wanted to get that, need his money, as he said. When it didn't work, he said, okay, I better go get a civil lawyer. After he tried on his own to get the money, let me go get a civil lawyer to try and get money out of Rocky. And you'll hear that because the civil lawyer would only take his case if he went to the police. Relly then went to the police 2 days later. 2 days after the incident, he finally goes to the police. And you'll learn of the inconsistent statements he made to the police because he couldn't keep his story straight. It is all over the place. You'll hear this ridiculous claim like the one about him being shot. And you saw that picture. The supposed proof of him being shot, the knuckle scrapes, the superficial knuckle scrapes across his knuckles, which are consistent with him doing what you see in the video, attacking somebody, ills. That did not feel the weather. But attacking somebody and punching and scraping the knuckle on the ground. What kind of bullet does that? Hits one knuckle, bounces down, hits another knuckle, bounces down again. I mean, it's ridiculous that he said that. He got shot. That was his first story. Now you hear the back off, way off that thing now. You'll hear his ridiculous claim about that injury, that it was a gunshot wound that required medical attention, he first said. Of course, now the DA just said to you, oh, you don't have to decide at the end of this case if you got shot or not. You don't have to decide, don't worry about it. Not that easy. Not that easy. You do have to decide because his credibility is at issue here. You have to decide if he was lying, if he was embellishing, if he was making up a story to get money. So if he says he got shot, and you find he didn't get shot, you do have to decide that. Relly at this very moment has a civil lawsuit against Rocky, seeking millions of dollars. Ready? $30 million for the knuckle scrape. $30 million. Not enough money. Not just. Oh, he also claims that he has a permanent disability. Permanent disability from the knuckle scrape. I mean, he lies about almost everything in this case. He swore that he has a permanent disability. You're going to see an Instagram video of him with that permanent disability, showing his manicured hand, turning it around with his Rolex watch on. Permanent disability. It is offensive to a different level. He even claims he went for necessary medical treatment for his injury to a hospital, but not here in LA, where he was shot. He waited to fly all the way from California to New York to go to a hospital many days later, after getting a civil lawyer and being told by the detective in this case, really, you should go to the hospital, not to make sure you're not going to die, not to make sure you don't lose use of your hand, not to make sure your knuckles heal. The detective said, you should go to the hospital for this case. The detective, it's going to be undisputed, told Relly to go to the hospital for this criminal case. Do you think they're trying to build a case in? Is that what we do? We instruct victims to go to the hospital to make it look better? Those scrapes are no more proof of a real gunshot than those shell casings that the 7 officers did not find are. And what else did the police not find after Relly turned in the shell casings over to them, finally, after walking around with them God knows where for 2 days? What else did the police not find? you'll hear that the police, despite examining them for fingerprints, didn't find Rocky's on them. Because bullets, metal, capture prints. So if someone loads a bullet into a gun, got prints are gonna be on that. Not Rocky's. Now, the shell casings apparently had no fingerprints on them whatsoever. As if someone who claimed to find them after the fact wiped them completely clean. And what else wasn't found on those shell casings? Rocky's DNA. They took samples, the police did, of Rocky's DNA for the purpose of comparison. They took his DNA to compare with the bullets. Zero. Nothing. Never connected to the shell casings. As I mentioned, he was licensed to carry and possess firearms. You'll learn that he legally possessed firearms, which in fact were recovered from his home. You saw that whole bunch of pictures. He had firearms legally in his home. No problem. Police did a search, they recovered them. No problem with the police. The evidence will show you that none of those firearms recovered were 9mm caliber, because he didn't have one. You'll learn that the 9mm caliber of the shell casings that Relly claims to have recovered from the scene are exactly the type of gun that Rocky didn't possess or own. You'll hear, and you heard from their opening, that there was a single magazine containing 9mm ammunition in his home. And you'll learn that belonged to his manager, Lou Levin, who will tell you, he will be here and testify why that was his. He also was licensed. Most importantly, though, when it comes to this little issue of the bullets recovered by Relly, that didn't have Rocky's fingerprints, that the police missed, and all that stuff, and the 9mm ammunition recovered in Rocky's home, that one magazine, 5 bullets or whatever, most importantly, you're going to learn that the shell casings were completely different than the ones that Relly said he found at the scene gave to the police. Completely different. You'll learn that the 9mm ammunition in Rocky's home was a brand called Sig Sauer, and the Relly shell casings that he claims to have found at the scene, that the police missed, were a brand called Terell. I'm going to show you the difference. I'm going to show you the pictures. This is the one in the house. That's that magazine that they recovered with a few bullets in it. That was Lou Levin's. This says Sig. Whoa. I can't see nothing now, so can you zoom back a little bit? SIGSAUGER or something like that. Sour. What's this? How does it say?
Luger.
What? Luger. Sig, S-I-G. Sig Luger. The ones at the scene are these from Relly. FC, which stands for
Federal cartridge.
Federal Cartridge. Completely different brand, completely different bullet. Those are the ones from the house that belong to someone else who will testify here from Brooklyn. Those are the ones that Relly claims to have found at the scene. They're different bullets altogether. So much for that big reveal on the opening. They didn't show you that, though. They didn't show you the comparison of the two bullets. Just the magazine. Ooh, it was a 9mm. Different bullets. In the end, you'll see that all the objective evidence in this case relied on by the prosecution to support a shooting rises and falls, and I mean falls, on the word and credibility of Relly, who is a proven criminal and perjurer. Those shell casings he claims to have found, the superficial scrapes he claims is a gunshot wound. The video himself that he even claims he can't make out clearly. We have to rely on his rendition of it, only. Because without his rendition, you get nothing from any of this. Ladies and gentlemen, it's your job in this trial to evaluate the evidence. To look at every single piece of evidence they present to you, the prosecution, and ask yourself, does that pass the smell test? I remember Mr. Lewin, every time he stood up in jury selection, said, possibility? Did we say possibility? No, no possibility. No possibility. The word possible is not part of this trial, he said to you. Remember that. This case is not about possible. It doesn't pass the smell test, and you have to ask yourself that. Does it? Or do you have a doubt about a piece of evidence that's really the focus here when you consider the charge in this case? There are two charges. The first charge is assault with a semi-automatic fire gun in this case. No, actually I said that wrong. It's an assault with a semi-automatic firearm. That's the first count. Both counts of that, actually. The first one is the altercation in front of the parking garage. The second for the altercation around the corner. 2 counts. To prove those 2 counts, they must prove beyond a reasonable doubt 2 things. 1, Rocky possessed a real gun.
Your Honor, this sounds like.
Okay. The judge will give you the law. He's right. The judge will give you the law at the end of this, what needs to be proved. I'm giving you some credit.
Thank you. Well, I made the objection, does that make me right or?
You were right too on that one, Mr. They won't be able to meet that burden in this case. When the judge gives you the law, you'll see the 2 things that have to be proven. It's not even close. On either. The objective evidence in this case, independent of Relly, just is not there. There are no gunshot wounds, no evidence of actual gunfire as officers at the scene, no shell casings found at the scene. When the police arrived,
This sounds again like pure argument.
evidence will show you there was no property damage, no fingerprints, no DNA linking Rocky to anything. And that's because what Rocky had was a prop gun. Either that, or he's the luckiest man to ever walk the face of this earth. What is real in this case wasn't a gun, but Relly's attempt to extort Rocky. That is real. Out of millions of dollars, and using this criminal case as a windfall in his civil one. And folks, and going back to what I first said to you, my promise, it's a promise to you. Now, I wouldn't be doing this so emphatically if I weren't sure.
That's all right, it's just proper expression.
You will see, the evidence will show you hard evidence of an extortion in this case, and perjury to try and cover it up. Hard evidence of an extortion in this case, the evidence will show you, and perjury to try to cover it up. The evidence will show you Relly's understanding in that regard, that if Rocky's found guilty here, he automatically has liability in a civil case and gets money. Lots of
No,
money.
that's absolutely improper.
That's sustainable.
It's intriguing
Relly's
instruction.
understanding.
Counsel continues to
Stop.
make whatever
Stop.
objection-
No speaking objections. Stop. Disregard anything about the consequences of whether Mr. Mayers is or is not convicted in this case. The consequences have no bearing on any decision that you have to make, and you're going to be given a jury instruction to that effect.
Thank you. Anyway, it's been Relly's endgame from the start. You're going to hear some of the absolute worst things come out of his mouth when it comes to this case, this criminal case, I mean, and how much he truly cares about this case and what he was willing to do to this case for money. Ladies and gentlemen, when this case is over, you'll see that Rakim Mayers, A$AP Rocky's innocent. He's not only not guilty, he's innocent. And when we stand up here for our closing arguments in a couple of weeks, we'll talk about how the evidence shaped up. You'll see that for Relly, it was never about justice, ever. It's about a man seeking a profit from a fabricated narrative, using false.
I didn't hear. Read back,
It's about a man seeking profit from a fabricated narrative.
It's argument.
The evidence will show you that Rocky has absolutely nothing to hide here. He's a man, evidence will show you, he's a man who built success through passion, talent, and hard work. He stands in stark contrast to this relative. You will see Kate stand next week and lie to you over and over again, trying to destroy Rocky for his own financial gain. He's a parasite who wants you to help him get his payday. But ladies and gentlemen, at the end of this case, after all you've seen and heard, all the evidence and cross-examination, all the things I promised you today, I will ask at your hands for a verdict of not guilty for Rakim Mayers. It's the only verdict consistent with justice. It is the only verdict consistent with fairness. Thank you.
There you have it. For more on the trial of A$AP Rocky, check out the show notes where you can find links to our continuing coverage of this case. And you can see me on my shows, Closing Arguments with Vinnie Politan and Vinnie Politan Investigates, every weeknight at 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern. Thank you so much for downloading. And as always, please don't forget to hug the kids.
This podcast is a production of Court TV. Go to courttv.com for more content, trials on demand, and to find out how to watch Court TV in your area.